Eli Gold, Lauren Sisler is alongside from ESPN and the SEC Network, and the coach getting himself situated here as we get set to explore another week of Crimson Tide football. Coach, good to see you. How you doing?
Doing great. How are you?
I am well, and of course, you know Lauren. She told me that she's already got a couple of questions in the back pocket waiting for you.
Well, I got one for her because she came to practice today, so I just want to know, what exactly did you find out at practice today? I mean, I know you're, scout and all that. So what did you exactly find out there?
What I want to tell you that I found out is that noise you guys pump inside of there is piercing. I do not know how you guys do that, because the communication out there, we were trying to talk to each other, it's pretty wild. So I kind of get what you guys deal with there on the field on game day. Kind of, maybe a little bit.
Well, the purpose of doing that is we used to just do it when we played on the road. So we did it for the offense, knowing that there would be noise when we had the ball. But what we started to find out, especially against no-huddle teams, when we played at home and our fans are very spirited and they make noise when the other team has the ball, our defensive players couldn't communicate. So when we play at home now, we have the noise going for the defensive players because you can't communicate. We don't want you to be able to verbally communicate. You have to use hand signals, and everybody's got to get the signals from the sidelines. Like last week, there was at least a half a dozen times when we're not lined up on defense because they're going fast, and everybody doesn't get the signal from the sidelines, and you got people out of position. So that's the purpose. We try to create chaos. It wasn't that we didn't want you to be able to talk during practice. We just didn't want the players to talk.
Got to keep those secrets at bay.
Yeah.
Why don't you jump in with your first formal question, Lauren, and let's get us going for the night.
Well, I was going to ask you how you're doing, but you look like you're doing pretty good here. 4 weeks into the college football season, how are you feeling overall about this football team, offensively, defensively, and just across the board right now?
Well, we've done some good things so far. I don't really think we've, sort of played a complete game and played our best from start to finish in any game, so far. I think that the fact that we have a lot of young players playing, especially on defense, and we've lost some of our more experienced players, those guys are a little more anxious, a little more apprehensive. You can't really coach experience. They got to get it on the job. We got to do the best job that we can to help prepare them. But there's still a lot of anxiety in the game, especially when the other team does something a little bit different than what we practiced and what we prepared for. So that's a bit of a work in progress, but I like the attitude of the players. I like the young kids. They're going to be really, really good players. And it's a challenge for us. But, the other thing that I think, I've talked about before, that we haven't played as well as I think we can play, even though we've done some great things, especially on offense. Been very explosive, made a lot of big plays, got too many penalties, which we got to get that part of it resolved. But the players have to understand that the other team sees their vulnerabilities. So we're trying to get them to pay attention to detail and do the things and understand the things so that they don't have those vulnerabilities, because when you play somebody down the road that's good, they're going to take advantage of that, because that's what you're putting on tape. All these guys want to play, but then if you're going to create value, what you put on tape, you better play good. And sometimes players don't understand we're actually protecting them by not playing them before they're ready to play. So we want everybody to be ready to play, and I think we got a couple guys, that are being pushed into playing on defense maybe before they were ready, but they've done a good job with the challenge.
Let's talk about one of the young guys on defense, Justin Aboigbe, the freshman defensive end. Had that foot injury early. He's okay, and apparently being pressed into service now with LeBrian Ray's injury. Let's talk a little bit about him, because I know the fans have heard the name, probably don't know that much about him.
Well, Justin was actually a starter because LeBrian didn't go through spring practice because of a previous foot injury, which this is an aggravation of. And so he actually was a starter. He was here in the spring and was doing extremely well in fall camp. Of course, when he was out for 2 weeks, that probably set him back a little bit. Sure. But we have a lot of confidence in him. I think Byron Young is another freshman that will sort of play that position too, and we're trying to get those guys to develop and get them to understand the importance of, if they understand the basics and they really are confident in the basics of what they have to do, they'll be able to adapt better in the game when things happen that they haven't seen.
Want to stay with this line of thought here. A question came in from the Nick Saban Show blog on AL.com. Greg in Moulton, Alabama, said, Coach, if our defensive line situation were to get really bad because of injuries, would we see some offensive linemen switch over to defense for depth? He says, I'm sure many of them played defensive line in high school. Thanks and roll tide.
Well, if you could identify the guys on the offensive line that we think could help us play defense, I'd be the first guy to put them over there, believe me. But I think that, we are getting in a situation now where we're getting to where we don't have, that many players at that position. Sure. It's going to be very critical that we can stay healthy at that position, or there'll be, a pretty significant drop-off. And if you can't control the line of scrimmage on defense and you can't affect the quarterback with the pass rush, it gets more difficult to really play good defense. And I didn't think we played particularly well last week. We played too many plays in the game. Most people don't understand. We played like 90 plays of defense in the game last week. We played 64 plays of offense. Well, everybody thinks the offense was great and the defense was not so good, and I think the defense could have played a lot better, and they're responsible for getting off the field. All right, but we have to be able to control the ball on offense, not just control the tempo of the game and make a lot of explosive plays, but we got to keep the ball some, because if we keep playing that many plays, we'll get a lot more guys hurt, because that means we're playing 1/3 more plays in a game than the other guys on offense. So it's hard to keep those players fresh, and it's hard to keep them healthy. So that's a team thing that's got to be something that we can manage better. But I don't know that we have an offensive lineman that I think could go over to the defensive side of the ball and make a significant impact unless we just completely run out of players on defense.
Let's go to the phones, Coach. Our first call of the night brought to you by Alabama 811. Always contact 811 before you dig to know what's below. Call 811 or online, visit al811.com. Speaking of the offensive line, we've got your de facto offensive line coach on the phone, Pee Wee, down in Grand Bay, Alabama. Hello, Pee Wee. Good evening.
Hey, Eli.
Pee Wee, what's going on, man?
Storming down here, Coach, at the moment. But anyhow, Eli had spoken earlier about, Tua and Landon making SEC Players of the Week this week and everything. But they weren't the only ones that were chosen, for an award, which you were, which is being inducted into the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame next year.
Yes.
And I just want to tell you that I think, all of us as Alabama fans are very proud of that for you, and it's well deserved.
It is a great honor, Coach. Congratulations.
Well, I really thank you, Pee Wee, for that. Certainly it's an honor for me. There's a lot of outstanding folks that had a lot of great accomplishments in the Louisiana Sports Hall of Fame. So this is something that's very, very flattering. But I think that there's so many people that have contributed to, our success, through the years, whether it was LSU or here at Alabama. And I think when you get awards and you get recognized for things like this, you're only really kind of receiving these awards on behalf of all those people. I mean, Kirby was there the whole time we were there. Derek Dooley was there the whole time. Jimbo Fisher was there the whole time. I mean, there's a lot of people who contributed to recruiting a lot of good players. And I'm sure the success that we've had here at Alabama also enhanced that. And we've had, a large number of great players, but a lot of really, really good coaches who have contributed to the success that we've had here too. So it's great to be honored like this, but I'm only receiving the honor on behalf of all the folks who contributed to the success that we've had.
What makes a coach a good recruiter? I mean, there are so many coaches out there. Why does some excel while others may not do so?
Obviously, a salesman that has a good product obviously can do.
That helps.
That helps.
Yeah.
And obviously we have, I think, a marvelous product here at Alabama and a great tradition and a history of, people having success personally, academically, and athletically. So, you know, when you can call on those things and you have this statistical information of what your graduation rate has been one of the highest in the country, and you've won a lot of games, and guys have had opportunities to play in big games, and a lot of these guys want to play in the NFL someday, and you got 56 guys playing in the league. You know, all those things make it like you got really something good to sell. But I think at the end of the day, every player wants to know you care about him as a person. And you're going to spend the time to develop relationships with him and help him have a chance to be successful. I think that's what every player really wants to do. And I think that the people that really like recruiting, you know, spend a lot of time developing relationships with players. They talk to them. They spend a lot of time. They get to know them as people as well as football players. So I think if you're going to be a successful recruiter, you got to recruit every day, and you got to develop relationships with people. But it also helps if you had something good to sell.
Very true. Coach, to your right, we have a gentleman here at Baumhauer's with a question. Good evening, sir.
Hey, Coach. So I was wondering, what do you like so much about the slant pass, and what made it so effective last week against South Carolina?
Well, it's not just a slant pass. A lot of those slant passes that we throw are part of RPOs. Okay, so if you have a middle of the field safety, that means you can only have 4 guys underneath and 3 guys deep and 4 guys rushing. All right, so if you run horizontal type patterns, that means if we run a guy on a bubble pass, like the one Ruggs scored on, we ran a guy on the bubble pass, so that guy had to take him to the flat, and then the guy runs a slant right behind where he left. So now the corner's got to play it from outside in. When you play split safety coverages, some of those aren't as effective. But we don't even throw them, because when it's split safety coverages, there's too high, so Tua hands the ball off. So what seems to be, oh, we're in love with the slant pass, no, we're only throwing it when it's an advantage for us to be able to throw it, if that makes any sense. And we have probably, I don't know, 6, 8, 10 different RPO type things, you know, that we throw that are different pattern combinations. But they all work better when there's 6 guys in the box, which means there's a middle of the field safety. When people play split safeties, they're a little bit harder, you know, to complete, because you've got somebody on top of the receivers as well as somebody rerouting them below. So the windows are not as big. So you're always looking for formations that will get people into certain coverages. And when you get them in them, then we're able to throw them. And Tua is really good at reading them, and it works great. So, but I think that's why everybody, and I'm not going to get too technical here, but everybody that used to play nickel used to play 4 down guys and 2 linebackers. 4-2-5, everybody's heard of it, and 5 defensive backs. Well, you really can't stop the run if you play split safety coverages when you have a 4-2, because you got 1 extra run gap, so some kind of way you got to take the run gap. But you want to play split safety coverages to stop the RPOs. So now everybody plays a 3-4 front with 2 4 eyes and a nose guard. So you got all the gaps, and you're spilling the ball to the outside people. It's not as good a pass rush, all right, but you can play split safety coverages and stop the run. So the people who play the best defense now play that way. We kind of play both ways, and the team that we play this week, Southern Miss, they play that way. You know, they'll play a lot of 3-4, 3-3 stack, all right, which they got guys all over the place, so they can play more split safety coverages if they need to.
You see, that's why you're you and I'm me. You got that magnificent answer. I would have said, I like the guy who throws it, and I love the guys who catch it. That's the way I would have explained it right there. You know.
That's probably better than I did, to be honest with you.
Coach, when you watch a guy like Najee do what he did on that touchdown, I mean, you see him on the practice field. Do you like the rest of us, do you just sometimes shake your head in amazement at what these men can do, what their ability allows them to do?
Well, yeah, I do. But, you know, we've not been, you know, a big fan, really, for safety purposes of Najee jumping over people. But I guess when you have success doing it, I had a coach once that said you can break any rule to win the game. So
there you go.
Doesn't want to break anything else.
But no, I just
that's exactly right.
I do think that you know, as he had his best game, he played with a lot more confidence in the game. He pressed the line of scrimmage a little bit better on the runs. He had some real positive downhill runs in the game. I've always talked about, and people, you know, don't really know what a good receiver he is and how good he is in space because of his size, his ability to break tackles, but you know, he's got good change of direction, so he's really hard to get on the ground. Combination of those things, and it showed up on that play that he made right before the half on the 4th and 2. You know, he made a guy miss, he broke a tackle, and he jumped over a guy, all in one play. So the jumping over part, you know,
you can do without if you had a choice.
Well, but you know, I mean, it worked for him.
Yeah.
But I just, from a safety standpoint, we always try to get him to keep his pads down.
I hear you, Lauren. What else is on your mind to ask the coach?
All right, Coach, I want to know about your game. We're talking about your basketball game. We hear about your noontime basketball league. Which coach could you take one-on-one? I want to hear this confidence that you got. Who could you take one-on-one?
Well, you know, I've been WIA, you know what that is, wounded in action, right?
True.
I mean,
Sure.
We didn't play last winter, which is the first time we've never played, you know, since I started coaching.
So they didn't play in your absence either.
They didn't play in my absence. So, you know, but it was all because of the hip thing. And now that I got that fixed, I'm ready to go. So, but I do have to, I have to watch the guys on our staff. You know, when we get so much turnover on staff, everybody worries about how that affects the program, how it affects the players. Well, it affects my basketball team, all right, too, because now I got to check out the guys and see who can play. I don't know who can play.
Who's got the most skill? You, besides you.
No, I mean, I don't have the most skill. I just got being the commissioner, I can pick my team, so I can pick better players on my team. I get to pick the guy that guards me, all right, which I can get somebody that I'm at least a little better than, all right, and I call the fouls. So that's a pretty good equalizer.
I guess.
That's right.
That's great. Let's go back to the phones. Our second call of the night, joining us on the Academy Sports and Outdoors Hotline, comes from Evansville, Indiana. Eric, welcome into the Nick Saban Show. Hello.
Hey, Coach, how you doing, Nick?
Good, Eric. How are you?
Well, I had the privilege. Comment first, question second. But I had the privilege of being there for the Raging Cajuns last year. Waited 40-something years to come down to a home game. Met you, got my picture taken, and met Eli. Awesome visit.
Well, great.
And I appreciate it, and I'm hoping to get down there this year. However, we stayed to the end of that game, to the zeros. And I was just curious. I've been wondering. I know I heard you last week about the students and then the general ticket holders. How did they respond since you made that comment?
Well, I don't think it's really a fair sample to base it on the last game because it was, you know, like over 100 degrees. A lot of people were having a lot of issues in the stadium. I mean, it was a management issue because of the heat. There's been a lot of talk about us playing games in the afternoon and those kind of circumstances, not just for the players, but also for the fans. And so I would have to say, based on that, I made comment about how much I appreciate the fans, you know, making the sacrifice to stay at the game and be at the game in those kind of circumstances and those kind of conditions, even though, you know, I always talk about everybody staying for, you know, 60 minutes in the game and competing like the players do. I think in that situation there were a lot of players, a lot of people who were there to be entertained and support the team and all that it was really uncomfortable for, and I understand that. So I can't really say much about that based on that sample of that one home game this year, but I'm hopeful that, you know, the students and all our fans will stay there and support our team because I think, you know, you have recruits at games, you have guys making official visits, and the greater the spirit and the greater support, the more those players want to be involved in the program.
Exactly. Coach, to your right, we have a gentleman who's joined us here for the evening. Hello, sir.
Hey, Coach, have veterans like Raekwon Davis and Anthony Jennings been key in helping some of the younger guys on the front seven, you know, veterans get up?
I don't think there's any question about we've got some really good older guys on our team this year, and they've been very supportive of the young players. And I think it takes a lot of patience. You know, those guys have a pretty high standard for the expectation of how they think we should play. And what I've sort of tried to get them to understand is you can't get frustrated with young players. You know, if the other players see that you're showing your frustration in them because whether they make a mental mistake or they don't, you know, fit a run right or whatever, because you know, our players kind of know how we're supposed to do it. You know, that's not good. It doesn't help their confidence. It makes them more anxious. Even though we want to have success, you know, you've heard me say this 100 times before, you know, when you focus on outcomes, it's a distraction. You got to stay focused on what do we have to do to get the outcome. And that's what I like for our older players to do with these young guys. And they have been very supportive of the players, and I think that has been very helpful, you know, to the players. So, and those two guys have been very, very good leaders.
Coach, let's talk a little bit about a young man who went to Minor High School in Adamsville, Alabama, plays for Southern Mississippi. Their return man, Jalen Adams, who had a 100-yard kickoff return against Troy, an 89-yard kickoff return for a touchdown against Alcorn State. He had an 80-yard punt return for a touchdown against Alcorn State. Obviously, this guy's the real deal and then some. How do you prepare to face a return guy like that?
Well, he is a very explosive guy. He's got great quickness, very fast, straight line, explosive runner. And he's got 3 touchdowns on returns this year in 3 games. So it's going to be a real challenge, you know, to our teams to, you know, there's a lot of things that go into covering. All right, so kickoff coverage. All right, you know what the return's going to be. So everybody knows exactly how they have to recognize a return and how they have to dodge a block and how they have to fit that, just like a running play. You know, just like last year, we were undercutting and tackling a guy inside the 15-yard line all the time. That was by design and by plan. So we're going to have to do a good job of that. And if one guy messes up and goes the wrong way, there's a crease. And this guy is one of those guys that he's a crease runner. He's not a bounce-out guy. And when he hits a crease, he's gone. And that's going to be really important that our guys do a good job. When you punt the ball to the guy, the number one thing is we've got to do a better job of punting the ball with some kind of hang time and good placement, because people don't understand, you don't just line up and punt and everybody runs down the field. You know, you're punting in a direction, you got people releasing in a certain direction, so you have lane coverage on the guys. And when you don't get that, you're really, really exposing yourself to a bad play. So we need to get better execution from the specialist, as well as the cover units have to do a really, really good job of containing this guy.
Is Southern's blocking pattern particularly different, or is it a lot just freelancing on the part of Adams?
No, they have a really good scheme, and it's a scheme that we have not seen all year. It doesn't do me any good to explain it to everybody, but it is different, and our players are going to have to recognize it, especially on kickoff coverage. Their punt return, they just do a good job of holding people up. You know, they'll rush 4 guys and hold everybody else up and make some people block, and they do a really good job.
Coach, you had mentioned in your press conference the other day about the passing of the police officer here in Tuscaloosa, and we have a phone call from Fort Payne, Alabama right now. Carl, who himself is a police officer. Of course, if you're not familiar, if you're not in our area, Dornell Cousette was a police officer who was killed in action the other day, and that's what we're speaking of. Carl, and you're on the phone with Coach Saban right now.
Hey, Coach, how are you tonight?
Good, Carl. How are you?
I'm doing great. Coach, you know, our thoughts and prayers out, you know, to that officer and his family, of course. That's heartbreaking to hear that.
Well, there's no question about the fact that, you know, everybody in our organization, first of all, you know, we really appreciate what police officers do to help us have a safe community. I mean, it's really, really important that we have people like that who are willing to make the sacrifices that they make and put themselves at risk, which in Darnell's case was, you know, very, very detrimental to him and his family, and our thoughts and prayers are with him. But for all people who are in law enforcement, we have a tremendous amount of respect for what you do, and we appreciate what you do, because you help us all be safe. And you know,
Coach,
sometimes
we definitely appreciate that.
I don't think we say that enough.
I was a 13-year veteran. You know, I've only been in office about 2 years, but definitely, you know, can see the dangers and all that involved. You know, football is an awesome sport. A lot of people know that officers don't really make that much money, but you know, we do it because we love our communities. You know, I don't get to come to any Bama games, you know, but that don't mean that me and my buddies don't spend every minute on Saturday watching, you know, our boys play.
Right.
You know, touching on the game, Coach, I was just curious about. I noticed in the RPO game, I noticed that this year we've been utilizing the speed, all these, you know, these throwouts, and just we've got the guys moving, and pretty much to full speed before we get the ball to them, you know, behind the line. I see that's, you know, we're really getting past the defense. I just thought, you know, if you'd touch on that a little bit, I found that pretty interesting this year. Right.
Well, I think that, you know, one of the ways that we have tried, and I think Sark has done a good job at this point of we have, you know, 4 receivers that are very explosive guys, and you could get those guys the ball in numerous ways. And we've tried to enhance different ways to be able to get them the ball. So it's not just running pass patterns down the field or running RPOs. But we actually motion those guys throwing bubble passes. Well, those passes are really like runs. I mean, we're blocking the perimeter. It's like a quick pitch in the old days or whatever. But when you get these kinds of players in space, just like the first play that Henry Rokes scored on in the New Mexico State game, we really only blocked one guy on that play. The other guy missed his block, and one guy, but he got the ball in space. We blocked one guy, missed one guy. He ran by the guy we missed, and so we blocked nobody.
Yeah.
But we scored however many yard touchdown it was.
81 yards.
Yeah. So, I mean, what kind of plays do you know in football when you played that you didn't have to block anybody, or you just blocked one guy and scored an 81-yard touchdown?
None.
Throw me in that briar patch whenever you want to.
Why don't you throw a question at the coach?
All right, Coach.
I have a question. I mean,
sure.
how, and I know you don't work directly with them now, but how did you put up with Marcus Spears and Greg McElroy? I mean, because I had my time with them for 4 years. I just wondered how your time with them, if it was any better than my time with them.
So you told us about the story of Marcus Spears getting in your convertible car when you pretty much had to put the top down because he couldn't fit otherwise when you were back at LSU?
No, it wasn't pretty much. There was no other way to do it but put the top down.
Just stick his head out the top there.
Yeah.
Hey, those are great guys. They're a lot of fun. I always enjoy working with them. Always good personalities on that side of things. Love those guys. So speaking on the defensive side of the football, speaking on youth, especially, how is your approach different as a coach when you bring these younger guys in and help them transition from high school to college football, especially with the speed of the game and what it is here in the SEC?
Well, I think guys come in with a lot of expectation now, all right, which is something that is not maybe beneficial to getting them to focus on development. You know, what we'd like for young players to focus on is, how am I developing? All right, but we have sort of this, you know, these guys get a lot of positive self-gratification for the careers that they've had. They get 5-star ratings, 4-star ratings. So they come in with this expectation that they didn't really create for themselves. But they feel pressure that they have to play immediately. They have to make an impact right away. And when that doesn't happen, they get extremely frustrated. Where on what we'd like for them to do is focus on, what do I have to do to develop to be a good player? How can I focus on the things that, you know, are really going to help me become the kind of player that I can be so I can be productive, rather than, you know, looking at the outcome, what team am I on, how much am I going to play, rather than looking at what do I have to do to be able to play. And you know, that's really what we try to get those guys to be able to focus on. But the frustration, and I think this is why you have a lot of freshmen that transfer, get really frustrated, You know, why am I not playing? Why am I not starting? But if you ask them who they're better than, they really can't tell you.
Yeah. But
Right.
they're used to being the big guy on campus.
Right. So I usually ask, well, who are you better than? Oh, I'm not really better than anybody. Well, how are you supposed to play in front of the other guys? I mean, but it's an expectation that's created because everybody is telling them they should be playing. That's what they've been told all the way through. But we should be focusing with our children and people that we coach and try to develop on development. You know, how can we get them to do the things they need to do so they can be successful, and focus on that. But that's a word that is becoming less and less significant in terms of what people think about, and everybody wants immediate positive self-gratification for, I want to have success right now, and I'm not necessarily interested in all these things that you're talking about I need to do to be successful. And I don't think that's good. I don't think that's good for young people, and I don't think it's good for, it just doesn't teach you the lessons of life that you need to be able to learn so that you can be successful.
Very true. Very true. Coach, let's head down to Destin, Florida for our next phone call. Trent, welcome to the Nick Saban Show. Hello.
Hey, how's it going, Coach? Thanks for
Trent.
taking my call.
How are you?
Hey, I'm good.
Good.
I wanted to know, how's the focus and intensity of the team been this week, since you kind of gave them a little extra day of rest? And then also wanted to ask how you're feeling about the secondary these days.
Well, the team has been pretty good this week. I've been fairly well pleased that we've done better as the week has gone on, which is the way you'd like to see it. And if you're doing a good job of preparing your players, that's the way it usually happens. So do I ever know that? I know that we all say practice makes perfect, and I think that's very important. But I can't always tell by the way we practice how we're going to play in the game, because a lot of it comes down to, what is a player's motivation. And I hate it that we have so much external motivation these days. Somebody has to say something about bad about us or dog us in some kind of way for us to get motivated, rather than, why don't you just motivate it because you want to be the best you can be? I want to be the best player I can be. I want to play on this team. This team can't win without me playing really well on this team. I want everybody to depend on me to be the best player that I can be, and I want to be the best player I can be. That there's no motivation. Now if somebody says something bad about you or dogs us or say we're soft, then we'll be ready to roll. All right, so we kind of like try to find something like that. But I'm always trying to get our guys to have the attitude that you need to play at a consistent high level all the time. And hopefully, that comes through. So I can't ever know, exactly how we're going to play. And but I know one thing: you can't surrender to the heat. You can't surrender to frustration. You can't surrender to things aren't going well for me. You can't surrender to I had a bad play. You've got to stay focused on what you need to do to play, well. And I don't think we played great. At South Carolina, you ask about the secondary. We had 3 guys that I thought played well in the secondary, and we had a couple guys that didn't play very well. And we're missing too many tackles. We're not filling and run supporting like we need to on the perimeter. You got a guy that's got to have contain. You got a secondary contain guy. You got an alley force guy, and you got to have that on every play. And we just didn't do that very well, and that's why the ball broke out in the perimeter, and we didn't play some of the plays very well from inside out. So, but we got a lot of young guys playing on defense up front, and I don't think the guys in the back can start making adjustments in terms of what they're supposed to do, thinking those guys aren't going to do what they're supposed to do, because then you have all kinds of breakdowns. So everybody just got to do their job, and we got to have confidence that everybody will do their job.
Coach, your final thoughts for the weekend?
Well, I tell you, we've had a lot of adversity so far this season in terms of some players get nicked up and beat up, and it's created a lot of opportunity for some other younger players. And I certainly would appreciate it if our fans were very supportive. We have a lot of respect for Southern Miss and their program and their team. They're capable of scoring a lot of points. Last year, they were one of the best defensive players and best defensive teams in the country, and they create a lot of problems for you. So, I think that some kind of way, our team has really had a great spirit about them. We haven't done things the way we'd like to do them. We're not satisfied with where we are, but I like to see people get excited about this team. I like to see people get excited about, rather than just having an expectation that we're going to go beat everybody, that we get excited about this team, get excited about what do we have to do to support this team so this team can have the best chance to be successful, because I think we got a tough road to hoe, and we got to do a great job of developing some people, and we got to get better and better and better. And I think when people are really enthusiastic and supportive, it really, really helps, our players sort of get motivated to do that. So this is going to be an exciting game for us, and it's going to be an opportunity for a lot of players to see if they can go out there and play a complete game and we can dominate somebody. Sometimes you win the game, but you don't feel like you really beat the other team. Sometimes this year, and even at South Carolina, I didn't feel like we really beat the other team. We won the game, but we didn't really beat the other team. So, and that's always been, something that's been, part of our MO, that we dominate the competition, the line of scrimmage, our toughness has got to improve. There's just a lot of things that we need to improve, but I think spirit can help a lot in us being able to accomplish that.
And we were just talking about their quarterback, Jack Abraham from Southern Miss, who, quite honestly, I didn't know that much about. Threw for 463 yards last week. Last year, he led America with a 73.1 percentage of passing. And again, I don't know how the game's played out. Sometimes numbers can be misleading, but when you've got those kind of numbers, they're not that misleading. The guy must be real good.
Well, if people remember the Arkansas State game last year, that offensive coordinator is now the offensive coordinator at Southern Miss, and they do a really good job of spreading the ball around, lots of screens, lots of different things to defend, lots of things that give you issues and problems on defense, and you got to do a lot of adjusting, and they run the ball effectively too. But this is a very good passing attack and a very good passing team.
Yeah, Buster Faulkner, the man you're speaking of, the OC at Southern Miss. Listen, thanks as always for your time tonight. It's been a great show, and your comments again about the police officers, so very impactful. Yesterday, of course, they turned the blue lights on at Bryant-Denny Stadium to honor him, and we thank you again for your time and for caring about the community as much as you do about football.
Well, Miss Terry had some things going on this week. She's meeting with the mayor about doing some kind of center, and we dedicated our
the ribbon cutting.
The ribbon cutting. I never get to go to those things, but I hear about them when I get home, and it's kind of, I would like to be able to see some of the people who benefit from the welding school and who get their GRE from the high school and all that, so they can graduate and have a better opportunity to be successful. But we're always happy to do that, and we hope that somebody benefits from it.
Amen. Coach, thank you. Miss Lauren, great to see you, young lady.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Lauren, appreciate you. Thank you, man.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks for being with us. We're back to wrap it up from Tuscaloosa
Good to see
right
you.
after
Good luck
this
to you.
on the Crimson Tide Sports Network from Learfield IMG College.